What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 19 of the Firefighters Podcast. I'm back this week, and with me is firefighter Jason Burns from Fall River, Massachusetts. He's here to update us on where we're at with the PFAS and dangerous chemicals in our bunker gear. You may remember Diane Cotter from earlier in the season. So Jason's here to catch us up on where we're at. So Jason, welcome.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning to everybody tuning in. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's just give everyone a bit of your background. When did you get on the job, and you know, how long you been doing it?
Sure. So I'm on in Fall River, Massachusetts. It's pretty close to Boston and pretty close to Providence, Rhode Island. A fairly decent sized city. I got hired in 2006, much like everybody else on the job. It was a lifelong dream, right? So I've been on for almost 16 years, and really started to get very actively involved after a layoff, and became president probably within 18 months, and everything kind of escalated from there. So I spent about 10 years as a president and on our executive board, and kind of fell into where I am right now and trying to be an advocate and protect our membership. So
Right. Well, that's usually how it happens, right? I don't think anyone starts out to be an advocate. It just takes you, right?
Definitely it played out. And really what I tell people is that we had two young firefighters, a 37-year-old and a 32-year-old, who died of cancer. So within 6 weeks of being elected president, I was burying one of them. Paul Chippendale, he's a childhood friend of mine, but he was on the job. And then 2 years later, we're burying a 32-year-old. And that's really where I started to kind of question what's going on in our job. We all know about the cancer epidemic, and to me, maybe I was wrong or naive. I always thought it was the 50, 60, 70-year-old guys that got cancer and, passed away too soon. But something changed when we started burying 30-year-olds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about this morning. What you're finding is the chemicals in the gear are accelerating these cancers. Cancers that we may have gotten in our 50s or 60s are now happening in our 30s, which is very close to what we're seeing in the 9/11 community. And I was thinking this morning about all those young, because we buried a lot of young guys also, all those young guys who were working at Ground Zero for months straight. But during that time, they were wearing bunker gear for days at a time. So not only were they exposed to the chemicals outside of their gear, but they were also exposed to it inside their gear. That was just a little anecdote that I thought of. Like, that's crazy. That's why we saw cancers like, the experts said, 10 to 20 years is when you're going to start seeing them, but we were seeing them within a year, so that's
amazing. I didn't know they were that quick, but that's amazing.
Yeah, there were guys who died early on. Zadroga himself was like, he got it in 05, 06. So it was fairly early. I mean, it was more of an anomaly then, which is why it took us so long to prove our case, because now the numbers are staggering. But yeah. So after you buried those guys, how did you jump in? Did you just
So really, we started. I live and work for a very poor community. The apparatus are probably older than some of the drivers, and we bought our own gear.
Sure.
It was a disaster, obsolete SCBA. So my focus was kind of like, hey, we got to turn this train around, right? This has got to change. But in the back of my mind, I'm saying, why are we losing 30-year-old kids? So I kind of went down this path of figuring out what's different, what's changed, and somehow that led me to Diane Cotter from Worcester, and she had, blasted out a lot of social media and kind of asking someone to respond like, hey, I got all this information about your gear. Please, someone listen to me. And on the heels of burying two pretty young kids, I said, I don't know if it's relative. I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know if it's true, but I want to hear it, because it might be relative and it might be a way that I can protect the rest of the membership, going forward. So that's really where I jumped in. And if you know Diane, she had volumes and volumes of information and sent it all my way. It took a while to digest. I felt like maybe this issue was a little bit above my pay grade, so it definitely took a while, but I really started to get involved when I didn't really see a lot of action on it, and I think too many of us kind of said, hey, that's above my pay grade. That's science. I'm a firefighter. I just go and put fire out.
Right. But to that point, I think it is our pay grade, right? Like, I think as firefighters, you expect that the chiefs or the department heads are going to be taking care of this kind of stuff, but they're focused on a lot of other things. There were many meetings that I was in Washington where I was the highest ranking, member of the fire department in the meeting, and and I don't think that was by accident. I think there's a reason why people at our level are the ones pushing
Yeah.
this, because we kind of have to, because we don't, I mean, to their defense, they do have a lot of other shit to deal with, not just
Yep.
politically, but you're in charge of huge departments. I can understand it, but I certainly never took kindly to the, yeah, you're just a firefighter thing. Well, my response was always, well, fuck you. I'm the one here doing it. So, right.
Right.
I mean,
And to your point, I think that also gives me more traction when I'm having these conversations
yeah,
because I am closer to ground level. So people are like, listen, that guy is me. I've lived his life. I've been, crawled down that hallway like he does and
right,
wear the same gear. So it gives you a little bit. So to your point, it is my pay grade, right? It
right,
is what I should be doing right now.
right. Like I always said, if we're not willing to speak up for ourselves, how could you expect somebody else to?
Spot on.
You
Yep,
know?
absolutely. And that's why, you with this platform and everybody that who wants to participate and help get this story out there, it's all a piece of the puzzle, so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you, having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I met Diane probably in a similar way to you a few years ago, but she bombarded me with all that information. So yeah, it took me a while to digest it. I was kind of on my post uh 9/11 VCF sabbatical. I had to take some time after that, but yeah, I mean, it's very convincing. It's very easy to see. Um, she's very persistent, so I think that's helpful. But where I know she can't really talk about it, but where are we at now? We gaining any traction with Congress? I know Shaheen is pushing and a few others, but is that really it? Does anybody else?
Yes. So on a lot of fronts, from the beginning, I've always talked about information, education, and legislation, right? We need to get this information out there into our membership's hands, everybody who needs to know about it. And I think we've done a really good job of that. And again, people like you and having this platform and shouting that information, we have it now.
Right.
We're working on education, right? How do we handle this? How do we protect ourselves? How do we reduce our risk? All those things need to play a factor. And so the update with that is we now have companies. We have one that I'll tell you, Safety Components has been independently verified to have PFAS-free outer shell, right? So we are working on fixing an issue with the moisture barrier, which is loaded with PFAS. Right now, we can reduce exposure, not eliminate, but reduce exposure by getting the PFAS-free outer shell. And it was really important for us to say we want an independent science to say that. I don't want a company to tell me that it's safe because they told me the last stuff was safe. So
Right.
we've gone away with some science on that. So you got some gear that's starting to come out. We're still working on the NFPA test, that the UV light degradation test that would help out the moisture barrier. But then, like you kind of said, there's various reasons why people can't talk about this stuff right now. We got lawsuits going on. We had
Right.
lawsuits filed in California, Massachusetts, New York, with your FDNY,
Yeah.
with the Pritzker organization. And we also recently, Rob Belot in Ohio just had his got to go ahead on his lawsuit, which is a little bit different than the Pritzker group. So one of the lawsuits is basically about securing a medical attention, some surveillance of people who have this PFAS in their system.
Right.
And then there's another group where they're suing and they're looking for restitution, kind of like, hey, you've poisoned us knowingly and willfully, so
Right.
you're going to pay for that. So those things are kind of matriculating through the court process, and we're trying to figure out how best to proceed. So there's a lot going on. Again, blood testing. I don't know if you've heard much of the blood serum testing. That's finally getting out there. But even that brings up what's next. Well, now you get your blood tests. Well, what does this mean? How do I use it? How do I protect myself? What does that level mean? Okay, I'm in the 98th percentile. Now what? And that's kind of what we're trying to figure out and kind of get the information out to the membership. Well, this is what it means.
Right. And at the very least, you can do what you can do to limit your exposure to it personally, just by not putting your gear on unnecessarily, which I'm still seeing these 5K runs with the people with their gear on, and it's driving me insane. And I can't imagine that there are departments out there that aren't aware of something going on right now with bunker gear. I mean, at least hearing from departments near them of people getting cancer, because it's everywhere. I don't understand it.
We recently had a very large fundraising event, BFIT organization. A lot of our firefighters ran through the the old Boston Garden, the new TD, whatever the new name is. And in the
It's
past,
not the garden though. I keep hearing people refer to it as the garden. It's stop.
No way, not even close to that.
All right.
But they would run through the stairs and kind of complete this thing, and they would do it in their gear. And so this year we kind of made a stand in the PFM and said, listen, at least let the membership know that we recommend doing it outside of your gear. You can complete all these 5Ks with your firefighter t-shirt, and the point is still the same. That the people respect you because of your profession, and you're going to help whatever cause you're looking to help. And I would tell you, for us, it was about 80% changeover, which I think, in our world, it's very hard to change. So at 80% change, so last year it was 100% of the people wearing their gear. This time it was about 20% of the people completing their gear, which I thought was fantastic. And I think, listen, leaders lead. And in my professional, Union of Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts, they put it out and they said, hey, we don't recommend doing this.
Right.
And I think the membership will follow. So to your point, chiefs, departments, union heads, everybody's got to kind of get this out there and look for change and ask for it.
Right. On the line of change, why is the standard so high for this UV light vapor barrier? It seems like that is the holding back the true change, right? Like two-part question. I can assume who's pushing for it. That's the companies that are making it with the, DuPont and whoever. But like, why can't we just, it makes no sense to me. Like, I don't know. Who's holding that back? Who's
so right now that ball is in the court of the NFPA committee. So we had submitted, I say we, there's a bunch of people working on this, but we submitted a temporary, agreement to kind of change. There's a light degradation test that the moisture barrier is held to, and I think it's got to be, basically containing water and held up to the light, the UV light for something like 48 hours. And the only way they can pass that is by using Teflon or copious amounts of PFAS. Right. So it's interesting if you think about it. So our outer shell, you can get PFAS-free gear. That's the one that I know is subject to UV light all the time.
Right.
The moisture barrier, which is tucked in the middle there, is not subject to UV light all the time. But to pass this test, it's got a UV light test. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And Derek Irwin from the IAF, when he was kind of fighting for our amendment, basically said that there's no scientific, connection between that test and why, you would do that. It's baseless, is what he basically said.
Right.
And so unfortunately, the committee at that time turned down our request to remove that test. They said they're going to put it out to study a little bit longer. I'm uncomfortable with that because I know what the chemicals are doing.
Right.
I don't want to wait, but here we are. And I think, in some respects, there was some caution about maybe unintended consequences. And I think that's a worthy cause. We need to pay attention to that, But I know what some really significant consequences are happening right now. And that's, I can't forget about that. And I can't just push it off and say, well, we'll do a study and we'll get back to it in a year. That's too long.
Right. I think it's important to start convincing higher ups that that's something they should be working on, that, not necessarily. That's something that should be above our pay grade, is what kind of gear they're buying,
But naively, Rob, there's I think 40%, 30% of the voting block of that NFPA committee were representing the industry.
Of course, right.
I didn't know that. I thought it was a bunch of people who had my best interest, not their bottom line, best interest.
Well, I consider them all politicians, and when has a politician really ever had our best interest? Usually it's the only time they care about our interests is in November and on September 10th. But you'll be happy to know I had I don't know if you heard, I had the acting fire commissioner from the FDNY on a couple of weeks ago, and she's aware of this and looking for alternate means of she was talking specifically about the firefighting foam, but I got the gear in there too, and she's aware, which is a good sign that at least it's on her desk, those are the people that need to be working on this stuff, is the people who actually have the power to change it.
Change it. Yeah. That's an
So
accomplishment in and of itself.
yeah, yeah. Well, she's big into sustainability, environmental impact. So those are the types of people I think we need, you know, going forward. Because I think these issues are more dangerous to firefighters than actual fires. As you know, I mean, it's our number one killer.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to create other issues just besides cancer, right? I mean, we're seeing ALS, Parkinson's. I have all sorts of autoimmune and neurological issues, and I know it's from exposure to toxins. Partially, they attribute it to 9/11, but I also wore bunker gear, right? I wore it
Yeah.
constantly, especially in New York, doing 5,000 runs a year, and we, especially Brooklyn, if you're listening, wearing the gear around the firehouse and in the TV room is not the greatest idea. I know you want to turn out, but take the extra 5 or 10 seconds and put your pants on when the bell goes off.
Yeah.
But there's all those issues are what's more likely to kill you than the big one, right?
Yeah. I mean, in that regard, so the global issue is toxic chemicals, which I think
Oh, yeah.
I'm 47, and I'm sure in my time, the use of toxic chemicals has exploded.
Right.
We have a laser-like focus on the PFAS and the fire service issue, in our gear and in the foam. Globally, it's an over-reliance on these chemicals that is in the fires we're going to, in the products we're using. It's everywhere. So it's a big issue that we're dealing with all over.
Right. And it's in the food we eat, right? We're pumping it into the animals, into the ground, and the animals are eating it. The plants are getting it through the water, right? And then we're ingesting it.
Yeah. They're everywhere. It's remarkable.
Right. Yeah. I know, it's crazy. All right. So I guess there's really not much, can't really get too much into the lawsuits, but what besides changing that vapor barrier, what can politicians really do? I mean, I guess we could establish some sort of national database for the blood tests, right? I guess some sort of baseline, but
Yep.
what else can we do? Like it seems like it's an incredible uphill battle with the amount of firefighters we have, the amount of gear that's already out there, how little money a lot of these departments have. Like, I don't know, it's daunting. What can they do to help?
So for them, I'm looking for some strong language on banning these substances, right? We need
Right.
that support, and that's going to help out. We also need, because it's really difficult for, say, a local president to say, hey, city, town, I need you to pay for this medical monitoring, right?
Right.
And even prior to the medical monitoring, I need you to do this blood test that is going to see my PFAS levels. And then I need doctors who are aware of what PFAS is. How does it impact our job? What do those levels mean? What do those levels mean to certain body parts that firefighters are getting cancer at rates that are, 200 times greater than, the normal person? So that is huge. We also, I think we got to do more with blood testing, like I said, but then I think for us, and this is what your platform does for me right now, is we've got to let firefighters know that when they do get blood tested, there's like a clock of about 3 years, I think it is. It could be 2, but I'm pretty sure it's 3. That now that you know that you have PFAS in your system, if you were ever looking to be part of those lawsuits, like your clock is ticking. You got to seek legal advice at that point.
So that's 3 years from the day you're informed of it, or the day the
Pretty
test comes
much
back?
that you're aware of the toxin that's in
Right.
your body and all the impacts. Your clock is ticking, and
Right.
there's an end game to win, because then they'll I forgot the legal term, but they'll basically say that's too much in the past, and you got to deal with it. You got to move on. So
Right.
it's a very important issue. People can certainly reach out to me. I'm all over social media. I can kind of point you in the right direction, but that is an important factor of what's going on.
Right. Yeah, definitely check him out. You're Jason Burns 1 on Twitter.
Jason J. Burns 1, I
Jason J.
believe. Yeah.
Burns. Okay. All right. So definitely check him out on that. And after the interview, Jason will put up some more stuff for you guys to check out. I'll share it. But definitely, if you're a firefighter out there, as I've been saying, the best thing you can do is A, get tested, and B, stop wearing your gear when you don't have to. And let people like Jason worry about getting you safer gear to wear. But in the meantime, I think that's the best thing that anybody can do. And to his point, if you know, you don't even have to read this research to see what's happening. The areas that he's talking about where our cancer rates are high are the ones that make sense, right? Your groin, testicular cancer, colon cancer, rectal cancer, thyroid cancer, because everyone likes to wear those dirty hoods around their neck and they don't want to change them. They want to smell smoky,
Yep.
right? Those are pretty skin cancer.
Kidney, prostate, bladder, we're dealing with a lot of these way more than everybody else. And I think ironically, I guess, some of these chemicals that we're talking about generally make a beeline for those organs once they're in your system. So,
Right. But it's also the areas that wear out the most in your gear itself, right? Your groin, everything, when you're pulling your pants up and down, you can look down and see the rips, the tears, the holes. They're in those spots because that's where all the heat, the sweat, the
yeah.
friction or whatever. And that's
I think it's really important now that you just said that, just speaking to firefighters, they're like, listen, Jay, cancer is part of our job, and I want to tell you, like, I know that. I knew that going in. My grandfather did 38 years on the job. He died of cancer at 75. It shortened up his life and his retirement. I understand that. I'm not asking for everyone to hit it hard from the yard, right? Like, I'm not saying let's not go interior, let's not be aggressive. Go do your job, right? But you said it earlier. Only wear your gear when it's absolutely required, right? Clean yourself. All these things are part of the puzzle. Let's do what we got to do to protect ourselves right now and limit our exposure. I'm not accepting cancer. I've looked at too many widows and fatherless kids. I'm not accepting it. Let's change the culture. Let's lead the way for the next group, or staring at us saying, hey, I'll do what that guy says. He's a leader here. I'm on board, and we got to do better.
And that starts with, as you said earlier, from the leadership. More so, I think, in this case, from like the senior men or the guys who leave their mask on while they're overhauling, and the guys who swap out their gear after the job and take a shower and while, I think that's got to be they say clean is the new salty, right? So that's got to be where it starts. And I think
the culture change, and that does start with, and it's the senior man, it's the leaders. Those guys in the house are changing culture, right? And I'll tell you, there's a lot of guys who want to eat up this information and want more and tell me this and tell me that. And there are some who kind of say, meh, right? And I'm asking leaders to pay attention and lead, right? Let the next generation learn the right way. We've had our faults. I wrapped my kids up in my gear and took photos. I'm embarrassed I did that now that I have this information,
Right.
I've done all the wearing your gear at a parade. That's great. Listen, we're not doing that anymore. So again, it's like leaders, let's go lead. Let's do it the right way.
Well, I think it took some time. You're seeing it now, but certainly when I first got on, we still had that old mentality for when the guys were wearing rubber boots and rubber jackets. You just lung it out, kid. You just go in there. You don't need a mask and all that. But the fire's changed. I mean, you can't go into these fires with all the petroleum products in houses now and rubber boots. Like the fire's burning twice as hot as it used to. So right then and there, it's not the same job that it used to be. I mean, the fires used to go out, sure, but they weren't burning as hot. It was timber and cotton. It wasn't,
But it's a culture change, and I'm told of stories now that when our department got SCBAs for the first time, guys were fighting each other and telling them, basically, you're weak and don't wear that. We don't need that. Look what we've done for so long, right? It's the old saying, firefighters only hate two things: the way things are and change.
Right.
And so this is a change, and we're resistant a little bit, so.
Yeah, they ended up in a box in the basement when they first got them. They didn't. They didn't want to waste space on the rig.
Yeah. Right.
So. All right, man. Well, thanks for the update. Like I said, I'll direct everybody to your social media and we'll start getting the word out as far as we can. But in the meantime, while Jason's out there working, please heed his advice and clean your gear. Take it off when you don't have to wear it. The fire's not going out in the grocery store, right? It's that, if you're going to fill a boot, you could wear your job shirt and you're still sending the same message, right? I think so.
That's it. Everybody knows you're a firefighter, and they respect you just for that. So you don't have to wear the gear and increase your risk.
Right. It's more important that you get to watch your kids grow up than look cool while you're shopping for groceries. That's how I agree. So
thank you very much for pulling this together, and thank you for everybody that's paying attention.
Yeah, man, and thank you. Thanks for beating the drum. Keep going. As I told Diane, I'm here to help. You guys need me. You're welcome to come on anytime if you got something to say. So let me know.
Well, I'm an Irishman. I always have something to say.
All right, bro. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Take care.